Hello, this is Keith Seymour with Real Talk. I'm sorry that my camera's not working, but please feel free to comment um, on my comments. Uh, I'm discussing today President Biden's plan to create term limits for the United States Supreme Court justices for 18 years, I believe he said. And his claim is that this will avoid partisanship. The problem with that is our forefathers who founded this country saw these problems, and they dealt with it by giving Supreme Court justices a life term, because they knew that over a period of time, the Constitution being a living and breathing document, would have to be decided upon by our U.S. Supreme Court. And they did not want our court influenced by our federally elected officials the way they are in England and other countries. This has worked for almost 300 years, and I'm going to give you some very good examples. Now, before I do that, I'm going to state that, in my opinion, this is Biden's way of showing how ticked off he is about the Dobbs rule that overturned Roe versus Wade. He claims that the Trump administration packed the Supreme Court with conservative judges to get a law overturned that they wanted. Well, if we go with that line of thinking, and it may or may not be true, I'm not going to argue that point. I'm simply going to point out that the Obama administration did the same thing to get the Supreme Court to rule in 2015 that regardless of what states wanted, they had to recognize same-gender marriages as legitimate as heterosexual marriages, which in my view has always been a violation of the 10th Amendment. However, I'm not going to argue that issue, but I'm just saying what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So Biden, who was president under Obama, really has no reason to complain about what he claims the Trump administration did, if that's what he believes happened. I do, however, happen to agree with Biden that the Supreme Court erred in saying that the president has immunity simply because our Constitution states that no one is above the law. In point of fact, this is why Richard Nixon resigned in 1974, and several of his advisors went to jail. Nixon knew that if he was impeached, he would be sent to be tried by the U.S. Supreme Court. And they would find him guilty and throw his sorry ass in jail. Now, so to prevent from going to jail, he resigned and appointed Ford. And Ford, of course, pardoned him. So I'm just going to throw that argument out as being invalid, because it can be argued that Biden and his boss Obama did that in 2015 anyway. As stated earlier, our forefathers put the current system in place of lifetime terms so that there would be as little partisanship as possible. And I say as little because there's always going to be some. Perfect examples of this are President Eisenhower, a Republican president, appointed Joseph Brennan to the U.S. Supreme Court as a justice, and ended up stating that was probably the worst decision of his presidency, or at the very least, one of the worst. Because Brennan proved to be so liberal that he proved to be an extreme disappointment to Eisenhower. As a matter of fact, in the 90s, if Thurgood Marshall voted one way, you could pretty much count on Brennan to vote the same way. In 1981, President Reagan, who Republicans, and actually many Americans, regardless of partisanship, consider to be one of the greatest presidents of the 20th century, certainly my lifetime. I'm only 57. Appointed Sandra Day O'Connor in 1981. Sandra Day O'Connor would prove to be one of the more, to be nice about it, moderate judges. She was generally the swing vote in any 5-4 decision while she was on the court. As a matter of fact, in the late 80s, early 90s, she actually made sodomy laws unconstitutional. And I believe the case in question actually originated from her own state of Texas. Not that she agreed with the lifestyle. She didn't. I certainly don't. But that she said what people do in their own private lives, the choices they make are their business. So what the sodomy law actually stated is that if two people had sex that were of the same gender, they could be jailed for it. Basically, it made homosexuality illegal. I imagine that this ruling probably was used as one of the precedents later in 2015 by the Obama court to actually to force states to make same-gender marriages legal in this country. So my point here is because a bunch of conservative or liberal judges appointed by a Democrat or Republican president vote one way at any particular time does not mean they're going to vote the same way over the next 30 to 40 years. History proves otherwise. I believe Earl Warren, who was appointed by Lyndon Johnson, ruled on a couple of cases that Johnson really didn't care for. So President Biden's reasoning is faulty. Now, I'm going to basically discuss why those who are cheering this ridiculous proposal on are misguided, and those who are worried about it passing should not lose any sleep over it. And it's called the U.S. Constitution. Go to your local school, they give them out to your kids for free. If you have a state fair coming up, since it's an election year, they give them out for free. Your local library probably gives them out for free. I happen to have one right here. Don't know if you can see it, but I got it right here. For Biden's plan to work, the following is going to have to occur. Two-thirds in both the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate have to agree that this should be set forth as a possible amendment. That means 66 senators, not 60, 66. And two-thirds of the 32 congressmen, I'll let you do the math on that one, have to agree that this is worth considering as an amendment. I want you to think about the likelihood of that happening. It's not. Especially if people vote along partisan lines. I mean, even in the Senate in the past couple of years, we've been wavering between, I think most we had was 63 senators. That was in the first 2 years of Obama's first term. In the past two elections, I think we've had either a 50-50 split or 51-52 split. So that's not going to happen. However, even in the unlikely case that that happens, it still has to be ratified by 3/5 of all states. So out of 50 states, we're talking about, I think it's 33 or 35. And that's not easy to happen. The last time a constitution was set ratified 2/3 in both houses. It wasn't ratified, and that was the Equal Rights Amendment. And they gave that 7 years to be ratified. And it didn't pass. And the Supreme Court allowed Congress to give it an extension until 1984-85, and it still did not pass by about 2 states. So I really wouldn't worry about this. My concern is this. Of the people that we have running for president, we have one who basically his policies, or the way he does his policies rather, may not be the way but he's on the right track. But he's not a very nice person. Okay? And the other person, Kamala Harris, or her boss, basically want to overturn the Constitution. They want to destroy our U.S. Supreme Court. I want to give you something to think about. That's the purpose of this. And I want to hear what you think. So please put your comments in the comments section. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I would like to know your point of view on this. You can also email me on X at WriteStuffSeymour. That's WriteStuffCmour at X, or formerly known as Twitter. This is Real Talk with Keith Seymour, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the near future. Enjoy the Olympics.